Hello, pink people.
Hello.
Welcome back to another episode of the Color Pink Podcast.
I always just let you say it and I never say it with you.
Yeah, that threw me off. I'm not gonna lie.
I heard it in your voice.
I'm dead. So, I'm Sydney.
That's true.
Yeah.
I'm Halle.
Also true.
We took many opportunities to accidentally not tell you that. So now we're going to try and tell you that.
Exactly. This is the last episode in our subjective living series.
Number 6.
So we've covered community, appearance, productivity, career, routine. And today we're covering emotions.
Thank God you have a memory, because honestly, it would have taken me a minute to make that list.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to hand it over to Halle.
To do my first job of every episode.
Yeah. I set them up and just knock them down.
I know. Let's go. What up? So, subjective living, the concept we first introduced early on in season 1.
Yes.
And we introduced it in an episode where we talked about objective living versus subjective living. Objective living is this idea that we have these objective best ways being told to us, sold to us as the objective best way to do things. They're really dangerous because they strip us of things like individuality and peace and joy and community and authenticity. Like the list goes on and on and on and on and on. The positive inverse is subjective living. We've set up all these episodes, as you probably well know by now, to cross the line, so to speak, from objective living to subjective living, where fruitfulness is present. Yeah, I think this time I did the worst.
It's okay.
It's okay. I didn't do a bad job, but it wasn't as stellar as some of the other episodes. That's all right. Not every day is our day.
Sorry, we're kind of facing a little bit of burnout.
Yeah.
So,
not podcast burnout.
No.
Work burnout.
Yeah. So, final episode about emotions.
I love emotions. Well, we all love and hate emotions. We've all seen Inside Out. Yeah.
That was funny. So throughout the series, we've been talking about emotional indicators. Originally, the topic for this episode was meant to be unbothered. And this seems like a very good topic to end on, considering this is something that's extremely personal, extremely intimate to all of us. And I think will leave you with quite a big impact in your personal lives.
Indeed.
When we were originally discussing this topic, drafting for this topic, we identified 5 challenging goals we were reaching for. And we mean challenging as in soul-sucking, Dementor type goals that were just not good for us. Like
tragic aspirations. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The first goal, optics.
Which by now is a Color Pink podcast vocab word.
It is. You'll find it in the glossary.
I love that. We should make one.
And this has been a theme throughout all of the episodes that we've talked about, even going back to last season, optics. Everything that we do objectively is for optics, you know what I mean? Just based on what looks good, what performs well with other people, not necessarily what feels good. And essentially it is this idea that not displaying emotions, so hiding your emotions, suppressing your emotions, pretending that you are emotionless, equates to having a more desirable life, which is wild.
Or only positive emotions.
Like toxic positivity.
Yeah. Like cherry picking what emotions get stage time, air time, based on the fact there's always an audience there.
Yeah. Typically, you're only supposed to show the good emotions, and even the good emotions, they're supposed to have a filter on them. And so essentially what this boiled down to for us is that this idea that emotions means that you are not invincible. It means that, hey, you are in fact human, and being human, you're imperfect, but in a bad way, you know, and therefore you're a liability to yourself and others.
That hurts.
Bro. It does hurt. It does fucking hurt. And you said if you show that you're bothered, you lose credibility.
Yes.
Because okay, I'm watching Mad Men right now. Have you watched Mad Men?
No, I'm just laughing at how I can imagine that's a little bit of variety compared to the Mad Women you're normally watching.
Oh yeah, Real Housewives. But yeah, I'm rewatching it for the 3rd time. And it's basically this show about advertising executives in New York City in the 1960s, bro, the misogyny that exists within that show, it constantly, they're telling men who like get upset, you're acting like a woman. Or like if a woman cries, oh, this is why women are secretaries, you know, they can't handle their emotions, so they wouldn't be able to handle a big account. And it's like, it's so ingrained in like society that like, hey, don't show your shit, because that means that you're just not trustworthy, you're not credible.
Yeah, the idea that an unbothered woman is a powerful woman, it is disempowering.
Yeah
Equating those two words with each other, I get it. I get why it feels powerful. I get how like you decide to be unbothered or identify as unbothered and you stand a little straighter and things, but I think there's a really disempowering side of that when the audience goes away and you get home that night.
I think part of it has to do with her second tragic aspiration, as he's so beautifully worded. Confidence / worthiness. So I think when you put on a front that you're unbothered, it almost like a prey thing. If you're like looking to like find prey, whatever, and like prey ends up like squawking back or whatever it is, and you're like, oh, wait a second, I respect you because I can't fuck with you. And I think ultimately kind of like reinforces this like fake front of like, okay, like you can't get to me through my emotions, I gain respect.
And what's interesting to me is that I think this idea of like to be cool and respected and desired and liked, you need to not care. I think that idea is not new at all. Like I remember growing up constantly, we've talked about this, like calculating what it would take to make me cool.
Yeah.
And I knew that not caring and having this air of not caring was a big piece of it, you know? Like the only one cooler than the popular kids was the one who didn't care about the popular. I understood that was like some peak achievement level of unlocking. It's still prevalent, like shows that are being put out recently. Like I'm thinking about that show Sex Ed on Netflix.
Oh yeah, I love that show.
Maeve, right? Maeve is like the only one cooler than the cool people because she doesn't give a fuck. Right? But of course we see behind the scenes that she needs to be bothered. She needs to process some of this stuff and she does care, you know? There's just, I guess what I'm getting at is there isn't plenty of messages all around that not caring makes you peak coolness.
Yeah. Well, we're also taught, going on to our third tragic aspiration, that not caring, being unbothered, not showing emotions leads to freedom. So when we were talking about this, we came up with two types of people. There are people who are bitter and therefore bothered. These people that let their emotions get in the way of them, you know, like that's what they're perceived as. It's like, oh, they can't get out of their own way, whatever. So therefore they're miserable, they're bothered, blah, 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 all these things. And then there are people who live lavishly, and that's because they're not bothered.
Yeah, this stood out to me because none of us really aspire to be the bitter, unbothered person, but we do aspire. We have a tragic aspiration to be those like really lavish, unbothered people.
You actually were talking about your experiences in Miami.
Of course, there are some very warm people in Miami, but there were a ton of people who, again, are like knee deep in hustle culture. Oh my God. And they're so cold, so difficult to connect with, so difficult to learn about. They're like walking objectives.
Yeah.
I don't know, like that air followed people who lived lavishly. So like you meet someone on Monday who lives lavishly in Miami.
Yeah.
And with them comes this air of being cold and unbothered. You meet someone Tuesday who lives lavishly in Miami in a different way. With them comes this, I mean, you cannot escape it. So it like becomes a pattern in a young, impressionable person in Miami's mind that if I want to achieve success or live this like nice, comfortable, accomplished life, how am I going to achieve that? It's through having this air about me. And it was really hard to be in that because it's disempowering. And it was hard to move away from that emotionally or spiritually while still living in a place where it's very prevalent. You know?
No, I get that entirely.
Yeah.
When you're seeing people who are living these lives that seem like just so convenient, let's be honest, working in a corporation is kind of like a death sentence sometimes, you know? So it's like when they're like living these lives that like they just get to do whatever they want and they just seem so happy, you know what I mean? And like they're displaying that they're cold, that they don't sweat the small things, you know what I mean? It like allows them in a way freedom. And I think when we were talking about it, we kind of misinterpreted what that freedom was. And we placed it above peace. I can't draw on like an experience as like dense experience
it's hard
as
to
Miami.
find people as dense as the people in Miami.
But it's like I can definitely recall like messaging that I've received in my life that the people who are who experience that emotional freedom are people who are successful. Those are the people that, once again, don't sweat the small things, but in a way it's fucking reckless because it's like you're telling people not to listen to themselves, which is like a huge mess.
Okay, exactly.
Yeah.
And they're so unbothered that you're convinced that life no longer looks at them as a fair target and just never knocks on their door and bothers them.
That's a really great point. Yeah.
So you're convinced they exist in this oasis of freedom and total invincibility against life's bullshit and other people's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's not true.
Yeah, no, it's not true.
No, it's not true.
No, it's not true. What's happening is that they're like on a battlefield, and what we think is happening is that they have this incredible shield that's like completely just knocking everything away, all the bullets that come towards them, right? Not fucking true. What's happening is that they're getting shot and they're having to carry on pretending that they're not injured.
Exactly.
Imagine the damage that does.
Exactly.
You know?
And I will say, I'm sure we'll get into this later, but there is a total difference, though it might not be visible to the average eye, but there is a total difference between being healed and empowered and being artificially unbothered. Huge difference. You know what I mean? They may walk the same.
I think that's where peace
look
comes
on their
in.
face, but one is totally objective living and one is totally subjective living, and peace is a big difference. Both can carry freedom in the way that they walk and talk and live, but the peace factor is definitely a differentiator.
Through that, like just observing, we're taught that by ignoring our emotions we're free, and therefore we're able to accomplish certain things. We're able to see more, experience more, accomplish more, whatever. Like whatever you want in life, it's attainable to you if you fucking ignore your emotions.
On the other side of ignoring your emotions.
And we confuse that for true peace. I feel like I have seen examples of like true peace, but it's not like people look at it and they're like, oh, that person, look, they have so little, they're not happy, you know, like they're not this, they're not that. And like basically just kind of got the messaging that like that's not something you aspire to. That's not something that's going to serve you well, right? And I realized it's really just rooted in like capitalism, that belief.
Fuck you, Henry Ford.
No, it really is. And hustle culture, you know what I mean? Because it's like, how are you telling someone that you're happy and you don't have $1 million in the bank, that you're happy and that you're not working on a side business that's going to blow up? You know what I mean? Like it counteracts all these things that all these people try to tell us about our worth, career, side hustles, whatever, you know?
Yes. I mean, my hope would be, if you've listened to this entire series, we didn't even have to do any of this to convince you emotional indicators are the way to go. Hopefully you're utterly convinced by now.
Yeah.
Because obviously we are.
Fourth tragic aspiration, strength. This one was a really big one for me growing up. Basically, I was told that like my emotions are signs of weakness, which is funny because vulnerability is not at all a sign of weakness. It's actually the complete opposite. If we can ignore our emotions, we're able to move through them, right? Not fucking true. But it shows that we're strong, that we have this willpower, that we're willing to do whatever. And it shows that, oh, hey, you're going to be really successful. You're going to make a lot of money. Like all of these things out of ignoring the fact that you're sad and you want to cry or something, you know? Do you have anything to say to that?
Yeah. I think back to my parents' divorce and being the oldest sibling. It was a strength thing for me too, but it was the strength of the unit. Me and my siblings. I looked at it as a very like, what's that thing called? Sum economy. I don't know, whatever. The point is, I only understood there being enough space for X amount of emotions. I wanted space for both of theirs. So I ditched the storage space I was using for my own to make space for theirs, right? And it's like, that's another place where it's like, I wasn't tragically aspiring to being unbothered, but I was only allowing myself to be bothered in complete isolation, which is essentially the same thing as artificially being unbothered because you're still struggling alone. Sometimes that shit's really on accident. Sometimes that shit's really on purpose. But regardless of how you got there, that shit is tragic. Yeah.
That's actually a really great point too, because I feel like, you know, when people are like, oh my God, you're so strong, when you're like going through something tough, and it's just like, I don't really want, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like,
it's not much of a compliment, to be honest.
It really isn't. But it's also like, I don't know, like what you said is a great point, where it's like, I feel like there's this expectation where emotions are allowed, just not your emotions. Save your emotions for when you're alone, or when you're with your therapist. You don't show that shit with other people, you know. Absolutely. And that's strength. It's when you're able to like provide that space for other people. Which is just funny. That's a very like egoic thing.
Egoic. I've never heard that word, but I get it.
Thank you.
Also, it's called a zero-sum economy. Just remembered. Yeah. The interesting thing about displaying strength, or like making it look like strength, is that it's a strategy that contributes to your weakness. Ooh. It's a strategy that contributes to your weakness. Yeah. It literally sucks the strength right out of you, because it's not natural. Well, maybe it is in this day and age, but it's not healthy.
That's for sure. Fifth and final tragic aspiration: pride and protection. And I can speak to this one a lot,
because you're an INFJ.
I'm an INFJ. Yeah, I've also had some life experiences that have made me have to do this.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The reason I was striving for pride, or to like maintain my pride and being unbothered, was that it helped me avoid additional emotional drama, or trauma.
I was gonna say, it's worse than drama.
Trauma, damage, all of it. Especially when you don't feel like you're in a safe space with people. It's so easy to be like, oh, I'm fine, because then people won't tell you what you should be feeling or what you shouldn't be feeling. And so like that was a really big motivator for me, is that I don't want to have any more emotional damage inflicted upon me. I still do that to this day, to be honest. But
fascinating. That honestly is extremely fascinating. If I convince people that emotions is not a topic for me, you won't talk about that topic. Right?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Never thought of that, because I've been fucking bothered forever. No. Like, you can't fuck with me. I have always given off, you can definitely fuck with me.
I'm dead.
I have always given off easy target. Always.
No. I feel like that I've had a lot of experiences where like people have like really fucking tried me. It takes a lot for me to like show emotion and like open up to people. And then when I do, and it's, oh, well, why are you bothered by that? Or why are you this? Why are you that? Oh, you're too sensitive. You shouldn't look at it. Goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. It pissed me the fuck off. And so I finally just started putting up a front of like, I'm fine. My little brother, love him to death. He's a Capricorn moon in the 12th house. His emotions are hidden, but like that's what I would do. Like I would bury that shit. Like you're not going to see that from me. You're not going to see that from me, because I don't want to be picked on by you. Which is so funny, because I saw that as like a weakness of me, when realistically it was a weakness of the other person, not being able to hold space for me emotionally. Bring that to therapy.
I will. Now that you say it that way, I guess I do have a little bit of experience kind of with this, where I would show my emotions because it's who I am. It's how I do life. I would show them to people that I did not expect to respond as poorly as they did. I never even thought to put up an unbothered front. Maybe I should have. I never even thought to do that. I more just stayed bothered, but also wasn't healing, wasn't anything, stayed disempowered, and thought the world is a terribly hurtful place. You know what I mean? So it's like, but we dug two different holes.
Yeah.
But we were both in a hole.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I want to talk about what kind of prompted the change that allowed us to be bothered and allowed us to show our emotions and feel empowered in our emotions. You use this term a lot, which I love, corrective experience. And specifically, you had a series of corrective experiences in none other than Miami.
Yes.
So can you talk about that, please?
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to define corrective experience in case like that's not obvious to anyone. And who knows, maybe I'm using it wrong, but it works the way we're using it. So the idea of a corrective experience is that you have a set of beliefs or patterns you observed or rules that you follow because of bad experiences you've had. And a corrective experience is something that gives you a data point on the opposite side of the spectrum and starts to like neutralize that really like extreme belief on the other side. And enough corrective experiences can like yank you over to the center or even into the positive. So corrective experiences are absolute game changers, and I like to celebrate them a lot.
Essentially what you're doing is that you're like rewriting your like internal code or like your code of beliefs, whatever it is, you know, and you're like playing scientist and lab rat in a way.
Exactly. A lot of your bad experiences happen with other people.
That's true.
And so a lot of times it is people behaving in a way opposite the way other people have behaved that provide you a corrective experience, you know? 3 in particular for me. Bam. Miami. Miami was a crazy time. And I'm the only person who means this version of crazy. Everyone else had a crazy time in Miami. But so the first one was I was working for these 3 dudes.
Yes.
These 3 Jewish dudes who were all frat bros in college together. And they were running this company in like such an unethical way.
Nice.
And it was just yikes, right? That was not the corrective experience. The corrective experience for me was recognizing that all the women in the office felt pressured to be unbothered. I decided to quit, but to be particularly publicly bothered on the way out.
Oh my God. I was thinking of one thing and okay.
I just made a scene, but it was appropriate, but I made a scene. I wanted a good mental emotional keepsake to commemorate this chapter. You know what I mean? And I wanted a story that dropped the jaw of every woman that worked at that company. I literally worked tirelessly to prepare a 4-month exit strategy.
I love it.
That like crossed a lot of things off. Like I wrote and rehearsed a speech.
Yeah.
Absolutely. On my bathroom breaks. While I got paid for them. I don't know how much of it I should say, but it was a good time.
Didn't you like send out an invite to Halle's last day of work?
Oh yeah, I did that. A party. Yeah.
That's how she announced her resignation.
And I also told the president of the company that we're convinced that he is behind the biggest conspiracy that ever happened in the company. And I laid out all the evidence for him. And that was like the last thing I said in my exit interview. By the way, we know it was you, buddy. But that was me being bothered and converting a willingness to be authentically bothered to power. Like good power, healthy power, like pretty quickly. And the thing is, my botheredness was vulnerable and it was honest.
Yeah.
And I was willing to be vulnerable and honest with them, because for me it wasn't about making a scene. It was about, I don't know, it was just about, this is a shitty, inhumane way to run an operation, that you can't let anyone here be human. I don't fucking like that, you know. And I wanted them to hear it because I didn't know if they ever would otherwise. So that was a big one for me. After that, when I was only working with private clients, one of the people I was working with was a feminine energy coach. Shout out Danny. The best.
We love Danny.
A feminine energy coach, which got me introduced to so many of the concepts that we have now like taken and run with. That was an extremely corrective experience for me. A, because I'm now collaborating with a lead woman, and B, because the principles of feminine energy, not that they're defined like universally, but at least the ones that Danny and I talk about and that we talk about, they constantly paint pictures of how emotional indicators create great results, better results than ignoring them. You know what I mean? And so I now just had this influx of like knowledge and evidence, and I was spending so much time in contact with these concepts that like I could not unsee them. And then the very last one for me, the last corrective experience, I've talked about my friend Joey in the past, but there were 2 guys in particular, Joey and Joe, because literally everyone in my life except Sydney is named some version of Joe. So Joey and Joe the broker. I mostly worked with Joey on our own creative projects. We talked about this in the last episode that had no stakeholder, so it was just fun creative projects. And then I actually worked commission real estate with Joe. Joe the broker. But we had a relationship that made complete, total space for our individual humanity. To this day, I tell him he is my favorite person I've ever worked for and my favorite person to work with. It killed me to leave Miami for that reason. I knew it needed to happen.
Yeah.
But I had a dynamic that if I only had to very lightly push the humanity button for him to say, great, let's make space for it. And having done that, having had those experiences, I now understand that humanity, well, I understand what I always believed, which is that humanity has a role in all of this. Emotions, the truth of your emotions, have a place in work.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to experience another situation where they don't. Mm-hmm. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's now something that I need because I know that it is best case scenario that we build personal relationships, work objectives, creative for fun projects, no matter what it is we're building or designing. There should be space for my emotions authentically, your emotions authentically. And if there's not, I just don't think we constructed it right.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree. I also just want to reiterate, well, these haven't been iterated, but like for you to be successful in those models at the frat company, working with Danny, working with Joey, and Joe the broker, you were successful in those models being your authentic self. And that's super empowering. You also said you collected data that bothered was the way to go, and the fruit of being bothered tasted better. Okay, I keep saying 2 + 2 = 5. I think this is a great example of that.
It is.
Yeah.
It's so true because I've tasted both.
Yeah, one's like devoid of soul, devoid of any possibility, hope, faith, all of it.
One tastes like a piece of fruit grown in the US. Another tastes like a piece of fruit grown anywhere else. Stark contrast. And that's really the game we're talking about with emotional indicators. That's what we're talking about. The second you put them in the driver's seat, at least for the time they need to be driving, your results will make you never want to go back. Really? I never want to live an aspect of my life devoid of emotional indicators ever.
Well, it's so funny. I feel like when you start listening to your emotions and utilizing them as indicators, it's almost like you take the blinders off and all of a sudden you're seeing a way better picture. Like if you're driving and you're just seeing the fucking road, you're like, okay, it's a road, it's boring, whatever. You take the blinders off, you see the rainforest on the side, you see the beach on the other side, you know what I mean? Like you see all these beautiful
mountains,
things,
the sunset.
Exactly. And I feel like that's truly what listening to your emotions does.
I also feel like not leveraging emotional indicators in that same car that you're driving in, it's like you've had the windows up and you've been in there for like 45 hours, so it's like there's so little oxygen left. It's tough. And then you put the window down and it's like, whether it's a hot day and gross day, a rainy ass day, it's fresh air. You can deal with the shittiness of whatever's going on outside because fresh air, you can breathe, you can recenter, you can start to address things, you know what I mean? And sometimes it's a fucking beautiful day outside.
I think for me, the catalysts were less around corrective experiences and more around knowledge. During the pandemic, I feel like a lot of people also went through this, not just a pandemic, but everybody went through that, but like a spiritual awakening in the pandemic. I like just really started like diving into like different literature and like interacting with different people, exposing myself to different like ways of thinking and like astrology and human design, like all of these things, right? 2 of the things that came in the form of literature that helped me experience the transition from objective living to subjective living. First thing, How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole Lepera. We've both read that.
It's right here.
Oh yeah, it's right there. Amazing fucking book. I think it really breaks down really well why the fuck you need to feel your emotions and why they won't kill you.
Chemically. It's not like, well, here's my personal biased thoughts on why you should like feel sad. It's not like that. No. It's like chemical, biological. It's fascinating. Fascinating. I mean, she talks a lot about the parasympathetic nervous system, which I'm sure a lot of people know about at this point. But basically, the parasympathetic nervous system, essentially, it's like our nervous system that responsive to fight or flight. It's like that part of our nervous system. But like the problem is when you ignore and suppress your emotions for so long, everything is like you perceive everything as like intense danger.
So you're constantly in fight or flight mode. And so there are ways in the book that she talks about like figuring out how to like heal your nervous system so that you're not constantly in survival mode, and that you can like finally break those things down. And like, but it also talks about like, hey, if you're gonna fucking do this shit, you can't stick to your old ways of pretending shit doesn't matter when everything in your body is telling you it matters, you know?
Yes.
The second, well, actually I read this book first, but the second book I want to mention is Energy Codes by Dr. Sue Mortor. I think I actually mentioned this in a previous episode. So through this book, I actually started understanding the purpose behind emotions. So all of our emotions tell us something, and we've been talking about this, but all of our emotions tell us something. Like, and it can kind of be broken down into like two categories of things almost. So you have grounding emotions, which are anger, sadness, fear, other emotions that essentially tell you, hey, something's going wrong in this situation. Like, it's alerting you something's not acting right, something's not right. By those emotions coming up, you're supposed to dig into them to figure out what's not right and align yourself back to an emotion that's known as an expansive emotion. So an expansive emotion is joy, love, freedom, peace, like emotions that literally make you want to maybe like socialize more, learn more, interact more, like things that make you want to grow more, you know? Also in this book, I learned this thing called the trapdoor analogy. So basically, as these emotions are coming up within us, Dr. Sue Mortor kind of describes it as like this room, right? And in the room, that's our conscious mind. These emotions come in, and if we don't deal with them, they end up falling into a trapdoor, which then the trapdoor gets sealed, and underneath the trapdoor is the subconscious mind. And so eventually, when you take enough of these emotions, I literally drew something about this when I was learning about it. Like, I literally had people that were falling into the trapdoor. But like, they almost become like mice, where it's like, if this is your house, right? If this is a room in your house, all of a sudden your electricity is not working, your water goes off, there's a hole in the floor. There are all these little things that indicate
eating through the foundation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are all these little things that indicate, hey, something's not fucking right? And that's because you're stuffing everything into your subconscious. So even though you think that you're not paying attention to emotions and that it's okay not to pay attention to emotions, it's actually doing terrible, terrible, terrible damage to your body, like your physical, actual body, your behavior, all of that, your mental, your emotional self, all of it, than if you were just to deal with it when it comes up.
See, that sucks even worse because it like it's evidence that you're fucking up current you and future you.
Yeah.
Not fucking up in a way that I want you to like shame spiral, because I don't want to either, but I'm just saying we're doing invisible damage.
Yeah.
You know, it's invisible maybe to the eyes and the conscious mind, but the rest of your being is feeling that already, and future you will unfortunately be repairing the entire home. The other book I might add to this, not on the same plane as these, but like, just if you're curious, there's this book called The Body Keeps Score.
Oh yeah.
And it's about how like things that don't get dealt with emotionally manifest physically.
Yeah. Energy Codes talks about that too, like breaks it down to like the molecular level. So yeah, those 3 books highly recommend listening to or watching, reading, whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. So next we're moving on to, after these catalysts, subjective living. And to answer the question, what's been the outcome, we have 5 success metrics that we want to share with you. Yeah. So the first one being authenticity and acceptance. Halle was talking about this earlier when talking about things that have happened, or her corrective experiences in Miami, but essentially recognizing that our emotions are a part of us. If we have to be in a place where we have to set aside our emotions in order to move forward, we don't want to do that, because that's being inauthentic. And it's like, I don't know, our emotions, I think for us, I think for everybody, but our emotions have carried us well, you know?
100%. They've treated me very well. It's exactly that. I don't want to work somewhere that I can't be authentically bothered, or I don't want to work anywhere where my emotions don't have a designated space and significance. I also don't want to be in relationships of any kind where that's a thing, except maybe, of course, like acquaintances where it's just not a piece of the formula, you know? But in the most significant spaces, like even my internal, mental, emotional, spiritual spaces, I need to hold space for my emotions, you know? And it's honestly a really beautiful gift to offer that to other people. Hey, in our relationship, your emotions have space. So it's something we can expect from other people as well, you know? Ideally, you both understand it. But it's a beautiful expectation.
I agree. I agree.
Exponential value.
Yeah. And I think in allowing yourself to be human as well as someone else to be human in a relationship with you, you really get to experience like the beauty of like life and like existing. I'm gonna keep saying it. 2 + 2 = 5. When you allow yourself to do that, you're opened up to a whole new thing. Like how you said in the last episode, you boost the saturation. But like,
exactly.
It's like once you start being authentic, listening to your emotions, holding space for your emotions, doing that with other people, it's like once you fucking do that, you like almost like you open up a vortex.
Oh yeah, totally.
And like the vortex is just crazy.
Totally.
It's crazy.
Yeah, there's truly unimaginable beauty, peace, freedom, and abundance in allowing yourself to be human, allowing other people to be human. Yeah, I guess the best way to describe it is like permission to be human is a multiplier. It multiplies anything you're doing. Giving myself permission and being given permission by other people to be human and in these ways has made me enjoy existing so much more. It's made it easier to exist, more fruitful to exist, more meaningful to exist, all the shit we're looking for. More charming to exist, more enjoyable, you know, more colorful, everything. It's a multiplier.
So second success metric, prioritizing our emotions has allowed us to trust in ourselves, allowed us to guide ourselves, and allowed us to support ourselves, which is huge because I feel like before I started listening to my emotions, I felt so disempowered in the thought that I have to support myself, I have to guide myself, I have to trust myself because I didn't know how to. And since I've been able to listen to my emotions, our emotions are indicators that guide us. You know what I mean? It's like you learn to start trusting yourself. You learn to start valuing yourself more. And it really just makes a whole world of a difference when it comes to your relationship with yourself.
100%. You know, people always say, all you need is within you.
Did not get that shit.
Yeah, personally, I don't fully agree, but that's for another day. But I do think that if you're walking through life feeling like you have 30% of the information you need to have and 70% that you don't, thawing your emotions out and letting that be part of what helps you get your footing and like make decisions in life, I feel like you're now up to 85% of the information you need. Like it's a huge chunk of direction and answers and all of that stuff. It's a extremely significant chunk. Like it's shock
tangible.
You. It shocked me for sure. I was like, damn, I imagined always feeling at least 50% lost for this long, you know what I mean? But like this shit just whoop.
I feel like before I was like at the bottom of a staircase and I knew it was a staircase and I knew there was a place I needed to go, but the steps were nowhere to be found. As soon as I started prioritizing my emotions, listening to them, the steps would appear.
Oh my God.
Like right in front of me. And it was like, okay, all right. Like, okay. Like,
yeah, that's fair.
Just kind of like assured me that like, you're doing good, kid. The third success metric, hope.
That's funny.
Yeah. No, read it. I labeled it as being depression resistant because I don't know if any of y'all are depressed out here like I am persistently diagnosed as. The reason why depression becomes very deadly is because like you just don't have hope. Like you're like, how do things get better? When did things get better? Things are always gonna like be like this, you know what I mean? And like when you start having hope, you're able to stop those thoughts, you're able to stop those beliefs. And that's why I labeled this as being depression resistant. And so I think where your emotions come into this is when you allow and accept your emotions, you allow them to pass.
I do also just want to say that though we can talk about this in 5 minutes, we're not trying to create this illusion that, oh my God, we have the perfect answer for depression. It's not like that. It is absolutely a complex fucking struggle. But like for me, I'm probably maybe 3 chapters further than my deepest, darkest depression chapter. What has made a tangible difference in keeping me afloat when things get bad is having designated space for these things.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, not just like, okay, I do it in this room of the house, right? But like designated space in my routines, designated space in my relationships, like clearly marked off space specific to emotional processing.
Yeah.
And letting my emotional indicators be the loudest voice in the room at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Over time, this really does chip away at some tough issues, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Don't be like, okay, I'm just going to get through this emotion and then I'm going to be happy. It's not really like that. Like there's a whole emotional scale. It doesn't help. Like it's not sustainable if you like just completely flip flop end of the scale to end of the scale. You know what I mean? Like you have to gradually move up. And that takes time. That takes time. I think as with everything that we discuss on this podcast, this comes from months, if not years of change and kind of just reflecting on that change and not saying that we're experts, but just sharing some of the things that we've learned. 4th success metric, connection, kind of like builds on a lot of what we've already been talking about. Emotions serve a purpose, and I think emotions are one of the beautiful things that make us human. I was watching it was a Marvel movie, Eternals, and like they were like, so basically it's like these aliens that never die and like they're meant to like go and like perpetuate life on other planets, whatever, right? And like they think being human, like they think humans are just so amazing, and they think like, oh my God, they're just so not logical sometimes. Like they're just like, they allow themselves to feel things, and like they allow themselves to like be impermanent in all of these things because like they themselves are not technically allowed to have emotions, but they're not, I don't know if they're not robots, but they're not built to have emotions, you know what I mean? And so I think it's so beautiful that like being a cognitive human being, we have emotions. Like I think that's so cool, and that's like one of like, that's something that we can share with other people. That's a collective experience that we can have, which ultimately just fosters a deeper sense of connection and community and belonging, and I just love it. Healing is the 5th outcome of emotional indicators X subjective living. With healing, and I think I've given this analogy before, almost like your mind or your whole being is like this really big library, and you become aware of a book that's in the library that maybe you want to switch out, that doesn't belong in your catalog, whatever, and you can take it out, but there's still a space there and you have to put it back. And that's what I mean by rewriting your beliefs or kind of like updating them. Like, how do you want to be going forward? Who do you want to be going forward?
Yes, my library looks a lot better now than it used to.
Probably color coordinated now.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think as much healing as you can do alone, healing multiplied by another person who understands and cares about the same subjects is exponentially fruitful.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Healing within community. If you have one person who understands these things, you're bettering your world and making everything safer and lighter and happier and freer and more peaceful.
Yeah.
If you multiply that by one other person who gets this, it's incredible. If you multiply it by 5 people who get this, now you have a community of people who get this. Like it's really important, you know?
Yeah.
And it's really a powerful experience because most healing is done in isolation because there's a lot of shame around it.
That's
you know,
true.
When you've typically only pursued healing in shameful isolation, it's amazing how like rapidly and fruitfully and in a sticky way you can heal in community.
Yeah.
You know?
We always like to leave you with some things that you can take action on if you'd like. First thing, get in touch with yourself. That's really the whole theme of subjective living. But in this the context of this episode, listen to your emotions. They're trying to tell you something. Like I said, all emotions, they have a purpose. They're trying to tell you something. And so it can be as simple as not necessarily like, what is this emotion trying to tell me in regards to this? It doesn't have to be that deep. Like you can really start by identifying what makes you feel good. Coming from my own experience, I think it's good to focus on the things that make you feel good starting off rather than the things that make you feel bad.
Of course.
I've been working on this shit for 3 years and I still need to focus on what's good. Because if you tend to focus on things that don't make you feel good, it's a very slippery slope and it can kind of be hard to yank you out of, you know? So I suggest starting with identifying the things that make you feel good and doing some prompting on why it makes you feel good.
Yeah. And a lot of people wouldn't consider the fact that a lot of the things that make you feel good are still things you did not hold space for because of things like the optics, right? So like what comes to mind is that concept of dopamine dressing. I dress in bright colors. Other people dress in wild ways for the dopamine, but never gave themselves permission to before, even though it was like it would bring great joy. There's still work to be done on the side of things that make you feel good, but challenge the whole objectives of like maintaining optics and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? That's definitely an easier place to start.
Yeah.
And it's a way to get momentum before you dig into some of the harder stuff.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Another thing, and I always say this, if you have the means, therapy, it's just super helpful to sit in a space with someone who's trained to listen and provide mental health guidance and emotional guidance and things like that. So if you have the means to do it, do it. I think that's great.
And if you don't have the means to do it, one thing we always recommend is playing scientist in the lab rat.
Yeah.
Chances are this is not the first episode you're listening to, so you probably know what that means.
Yeah.
It can be a valuable way to guide yourself through your own learning.
I guess that wraps up the Subjective Living series.
Oh, shit.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode, to any episode you've listened to. Do you have any parting words?
I just want to thank everyone who's listening for being like a safe pink space for us.
Yeah.
To do a lot of our progress and growth and vulnerability in public, which is hard.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't go well for people. But I'm grateful that we've had a very safe space to do this so far. I'm looking forward to more. What about you? Any parting words?
Just thank you. Thank you to you. Thank you to you. Thank you to you, the universe.
Oh, that was cute.
But like seriously, like this has been a really great space to verbalize my growth and reflect on my growth in a way that I haven't.
And celebrate.
Yeah. And it's like, it's just really fun. And I get to do it with my best friend. So it's a lot of fun. So thank you. And like, everyone's very kind on like giving encouraging words and everything. Like I really appreciate that. Like I love hearing any feedback.
It's
so
nice.
Once again, thank you so much for listening. Just in general, like not even to this episode, but overall, like thank you for being part of this journey. I'm not saying that as in we're going away, because we're not. But yeah, please leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. If you have ideas, if you have things you want to talk about, hit us up either on Instagram at the Color Pink Podcast or via email. I was going to say on Gmail. On Gmail. Via Gmail at thecolorpinkpodcast@gmail.com.
In conclusion, thank you for listening, and you're welcome for putting a few new ridges in your smooth braid.
Yes, yeah. All right.
All right, bye, y'all. Have a good break.